Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. You have to be 19 years old to drink in Ontario, but that still won't get you through the doors during peak hours at one Windsor bar. Plus a report today that states the City of Windsor failed to comply with the Municipal Act. That's for a decision it made a year ago to temporarily take over the local BIAs. And international students at the university have come up with an app, one that could revolutionize skin cancer detection. An external investigation found Windsor City Council contravened the Municipal Act when it held a closed-door meeting in February of 2023. During that in-camera meeting, Council made the controversial decision to temporarily take over all city business improvement associations. The CBC's Dawson Chen joins us with more on this. Dawson, why did the investigation conclude there was council wrongdoing?
Meg, the law firm Aird and Burles LLP say that council's closed meeting on this decision had several violations of the province's Municipal Act. For one thing, no resolution was made public about the general nature of what was being considered at the in-camera meeting. Another finding, council's vote on taking over the BIAs wasn't something allowed to happen in a closed session because it did not involve city personnel or anyone contracted with the city. Council did later bring the BIA takeover decision into public session, but the investigator says it appears obvious some form of consensus was reached at the closed meeting portion of the meeting. And not only was the province's Municipal Act violated, but the investigation found that council did not comply with the city's own procedural bylaws because no public notice of the meeting or closed session in the form of a public agenda was posted online. Aird and Burles LLP is a Toronto-based business law firm. They were retained by the city following a formal complaint about council's process back in February 2023. At that time, in a closed-door striking committee meeting, council decided to take control of all 9 of Windsor's BIAs for a 60-day period. The goal was to conduct closer examination of how the BIAs handled their elections, memberships, and financial matters. Some BIA chairs were surprised at the time when they received notice of this temporary takeover.
Dawson, what's the fallout of these findings?
Meg, council received the reports on this investigation at City Hall today, and we spoke with 2 city councillors who agreed with the findings.
It's unfortunate that this wasn't flagged during the meetings. That's always a heightened concern of mine, and I know other members of council, is when we're in camera, should we be in camera or should we be in public session? I mean, not even just striking committee meetings. Anytime anyone is looking at an in-camera agenda, the items disclosed on that agenda should be able to give them some kind of insight as to what council is discussing.
I think it's really important for us to apply a very high bar whenever we're thinking about whether or not we should be in camera or not. And that's up to not just the clerks, that's up to every single individual who is involved in those meetings, whether they be from administration or council or in fact the mayor. We all have an obligation to recognize that the business that we're conducting as publicly elected officials needs to be conducted in public. And people need to understand why we're making the decisions that we're making, because they affect everybody.
CBC Windsor also received a response from City Clerk Steve Lacadimos. He noted that administration has been implementing procedural changes over the past year. Today, council unanimously endorsed recommendations presented by Aird and Burles LLP. According to the clerk, these recommendations reaffirm the changes administration is already making, and there will be greater availability of agendas and minutes on the city's website as part of improving transparency. CBC Windsor also received word from Melinda Monroe. That's the citizen whose complaint led to this investigation. She said she's happy with the result. She's looking forward to more transparency from council in the future.
Well, thanks so much for that. That's the CBC's Dawson Chen reporting on Windsor City Council. You have to be 19 years old to drink in bars across Ontario, but one Windsor establishment is taking that a step further, only allowing those who are 21 and over to enter on weekend nights. It's causing some concern, with one lawyer saying it even violates the Ontario Human Rights Code. Dale Molnar brings us the story.
The sign outside the Kildare House in Walkerville says it all. No one under the age of 21 permitted after 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Staff tell CBC it's because the younger crowd has been getting rowdy lately. This 21-year-old man says he tried to get in with 19-year-old friends who were turned away.
I just kind of figured they want a bit more of a mature crowd, but at the end of the day, business is business, and if you're of legal drinking age in Canada, I don't exactly think it's fair, and it kind of put some complications in the night for me and my friends because, we wanted to go to one of the only Irish bars I knew about in the city, so it did suck.
I think it's very unfair, especially since we do live in Ontario, that once you're over 19, you're allowed to go in.
And another 19-year-old doesn't like it either.
I would have liked to go on. I mean, I was supposed to go one time, and then we heard about it actually the week after it happened, and then we had to change our plans that night. So anyone older than 21 could cause a fight too,
The Disco Inferno Club downtown caters to an older crowd, but also has a 21 and over policy. The owner believes it's his prerogative.
Had a nightclub here downtown, level 3, about 10 years ago, which was also 21 and up. Again, it's your own liquor license, it's a private business, so you're able to serve whoever you want.
But a lawyer who was once the chief commissioner on the Ontario Human Rights Commission disagrees. The Human Rights Code states no one aged 18 and up can be discriminated against for services based on age. Rajanan says that applies to bars and restaurants as long as they're following the law by not serving people alcohol under the age of 19.
I mean, the Human Rights Code is pretty clear in prohibiting discrimination based on age in several different sectors of social activity. I mean, employment is the one that we all know about, and it's probably 80% of the cases. But services and facilities such as bars and pubs and so on are covered.
He says anyone who disagrees with a policy like this one can file a human rights complaint, although it'll take a while to get a decision. AGCO representatives weren't clear whether bars are allowed to restrict people they serve alcohol to based on age, but in an emailed statement they said the AGCO registrar would consider any relevant findings made by the Ontario Human Rights Commission and our Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario as they relate to the regulatory responsibilities of a liquor license holder. Despite repeated attempts, CBC News has been unable to get an interview with the owners of the Kildare House. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
5 teenagers were arrested over the weekend in connection to 3 separate incidents. Windsor police arrested 2 more 14-year-olds in connection to the assault at Devonshire Mall where an autistic boy was injured. That happened on March 9th. In a separate case, Windsor police arrested and charged a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old with robbery. This past Friday, police say a 22-year-old met the suspects to purchase an item. The 2 teenagers had a weapon and tried to take the victim's money. No injuries were reported. And in another separate incident, a 15-year-old is facing charges after spraying an 18-year-old in the face with a noxious substance. Police say the 2 got into a verbal altercation after the accused was shooting cap guns inside a business. All the teenagers arrested cannot be named according to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. Some residents in Lakeshore getting a new postal code. Canada Post says it goes to great lengths not to change postal codes, but updates may be required for a variety of reasons. In this instance, some Lakeshore residents are receiving a new code due to significant community growth. Customers affected received a letter and they will be provided with free mail forwarding services for a year. But some residents say that doesn't outweigh the inconvenience.
Got a notice in the mail to say that it was changing, and both my husband and I are upset because it's a really inconvenience.
It's really putting us to the test, and I don't think it's right. I don't think they have to do it.
I think it's stupid. I don't know why they're doing that. Now I got to change everything.
If they're going to do new postal codes, then do it like to the newer subdivisions and stuff, right?
Of course, with less international study permits being issued by the federal government, there will be fewer students studying in our region. Well, this week, Windsor Morning is looking at what our community could lose when it comes to brain power. Amy Dodge sat down with international students working on an app that could revolutionize skincare detection.
Here's the implementation of our model that was trained on the numerous images. Here is the front end where you can choose to upload a file, basically an image of your skin, and you can predict which type of lesion it is, if it's melanoma, nevus, or seborrheic keratosis. These are medical terms, but in simplified terms, like in simple terms, it can predict whether your skin lesion is cancerous or not. And here is our implementation of our model.
And so using something like this is going to create an app. Can you explain the app?
Yeah, it's basically the UI of the app. So you can just take a picture, like any picture, you just take it from your phone, just upload it to the app, and this app will tell you which type of cancer it is, but to make it more user friendly, because not everyone understands the medical terms. So we will just try to make it if this is cancer or not, and then you can just easily know.
Lots of Canadians see a shift to electric from gas-powered vehicles as better for the environment, but the cost benefits of buying an EV against the savings in fuel isn't as clear. Now a new study shows that where you live and how much you drive play a big role. Lindsay Duncombe has more.
With 3 kids, a house in the suburbs and a job in the city, Bassam Javed drives a lot.
I drive at least 100 kilometers a day.
He wanted to find out if buying an electric vehicle would save him money. Higher upfront cost, but no more gas bills.
And then I figured that, this is actually something that would be interesting for more people than just me.
Because he's a PhD candidate and lecturer at UBC, Javed turned his personal dilemma into a study, comparing the total cost of owning and operating an electric vehicle with its gas counterpart.
There's a lot of factors that go into it. Electricity prices, gasoline prices, the amount of rebates.
What he found was the cost calculation of owning an EV varies dramatically, depending on where you live in Canada and how much you drive. Costs are lowest in Quebec because it has the highest subsidies and cheapest electricity. EV drivers there would have to drive an average of 46 kilometers a day for 7 years to break even compared to a gas car. BC comes in second with 64 kilometers daily. Ontario, 88 kilometers. And up north, owning an EV doesn't make much sense. To break even, drivers in Nunavut would have to average 181 kilometers.
And so there's actually a big urban-rural gap in the problems that arise when you transition to an electric vehicle.
This economist says policies to promote electric vehicles need to take geography into account.
And that's the one we're looking at right there.
Cost isn't the only factor for shoppers like Christian Sloan.
Definitely like the green aspect holds weight as well. Like it's nice to be shaking it up and doing your part to change the game a little bit.
As for Javed, after all that research, he drives an electric plug-in hybrid.
If you're driving a lot, and depending on where you live in Canada, it can make a lot of sense.
For the amount of time he spends on the road, he figures he'll save money eventually. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
An Ontario business owner says she's being penalized for bringing manufacturing home to Canada. Border officials hit her company with tens of thousands of dollars in surprise tariffs. Senior business reporter Anisa Dari has the details.
This all started when a Markham, Ontario-based company selling couches for kids decided it wanted to make them in Canada instead of in China. Barumba Play makes furniture that kids can disassemble and reassemble into forts. Everything used to be made in China and was imported without tariffs, a type of tax, because it's a children's toy. After manufacturing came back to Canada, the one thing they couldn't get made here was the slip covers for the couches. At first, they were able to bring those in from China without being taxed because it was still considered part of a children's toy. But then the Canada Border Services Agency changed its tune.
I received a letter from the CBSA saying, actually, it's not a toy, it's fabric, and we're going to group you in with carpets, bed linens, and table linens. And we want you to pay an 18% duty, not just going forward, but retroactive for the last couple years. And by the way, if you don't like it, you can file an appeal, but you have to pay us all the money first.
That money is estimated by the owners to be anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000. Money the business would prefer to hang on to while it appeals this decision. But unfortunately, while personal income tax collection can be suspended in some cases, that's not possible with tariffs like this.
If you don't pay it, they will go after you, even if you're launching an appeal. I've had clients with $1 million plus assessments, wrong assessments, have to go out of business because they can't pay it. And by the time the appeal process runs its course, which is going to take time, They can't manage it.
The CBSA refused interview requests about this subject and didn't provide a written statement either. Barumba Play says the company got legal advice and is fighting these extra charges. But the owner also says she feels penalized for bringing her manufacturing back to Canada. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
Well, it looks like winter showed up today. Colette Kennedy is back with your weather forecast. Birders are flocking to Essex County during an unusual time of the year. They're here trying to spot a large group of American white pelicans that are hanging out near Amherstburg. The CBC's Mike Evans caught up with those out-of-towners.
I'm here to see the pelicans.
You came all the way from Mississauga to see the pelicans?
I did, and I brought my 92-year-old mother.
Amazing, and she wants to see the pelicans as well?
She's started up the road there. We're here to see. It looks amazing that there's not just one. I've seen down near Darlington, I've seen one off, but I've never seen the number that are being shown.
I got here at 7:30 coming down from Sarnia, left at 7 o'clock.
Oh, wow. So you came here just to see the pelicans?
Yes, I did. And there were 30 on the mud flap. And that's the last piece of the puzzle I needed. And man, did I get really good slow motion videos and pictures. It was one awesome photo shoot. It was amazing. They were grooming, they were fighting, they were doing all kinds of antics.
And so it was worth the trip.
It was absolutely worth the trip. I'm so glad. This is my 4th time in 2 weeks to Holiday Beach, and they're the only 4 times I've been in Holiday Beach, and I'm a happy camper.
Colette, I don't know much about American white pelicans.
I don't either.
But a quick Google search tells me they don't love the cold and the snow, so I imagine today was a rude awakening for them, and of course, for us humans who got very used to the warm.
I know, right? We are just finding, because it's been the mildest winter and then a mild start to March, a lot of confusion, right? Not just humans, wildlife, and we're also seeing it with the foliage too. And, you know, some of the cherry blossoms have come out down along the eastern seaboard. And here we are, though, into this cooler pocket that's going to be sticking around for a week. And just as tomorrow, we are headed into the beginning of spring. So tomorrow at 11:06 p.m., so it is tomorrow evening, we do get into our spring equinox, the sun over the equator, essentially equal day and night in terms of what we're seeing. The current temperatures, though, they do take a little bit of adjusting to, just, you know, getting a situation where you've got the right layers on and you're prepared for it, especially when we have to factor in the winds as well. And so then we're dealing with wind chills, making it feel like we're in the negatives, around -4 that we've been seeing most recently, as those winds sustained around just over 20 kilometers an hour, but the gusts have been stronger, as we know. And you see the direction here on the red arrows coming in kind of from the west-northwest, more of a northwesterly component. Those are going to shift a little bit as we go into Tuesday, becoming a bit more to the west and then to the southwest. So it's still, as that crosses over the waters, and a lot of our waters open in the Great Lakes, right? They didn't freeze as much because of the mild winter that we've been experiencing, and that's really driving a lot of the flurry activity that we're seeing, because it's lake effect, and it's more than flurries in certain pockets into the snow belt. There are areas with winter weather travel advisories for Tuesday, and that's not only because of this situation, but an Alberta clipper that's going to really be the center of it, moving over the upper Great Lakes, but that's going to reinforce some strong winds for a few days. So keep driving in some of the lake effect for southwestern Ontario. Yes, we get the flurries. We'll probably see that back off as the winds back off a bit tonight. Maybe some partial clearing, and then guess what? Tomorrow morning, clouds, some flurries back. And I'm going to keep the risk of that through the day, but I will tell you that most of it is going to be north and east, and that will just kind of deal with the odd one in our skies. So do know a bit of clearing tonight, then that batch kind of pushes through tomorrow morning, and then it's a lot of cloud, and not only to deal with, I'll tell you, Tuesday, but into parts of Wednesday as well. I say it's an Alberta clipper, and it is. It's moving through across the upper Great Lakes there, but clippers, usually we call them that because they move a bit more quickly, and it's going to have an influence, at least in the situation with the winds. It will continue to have an influence on us even as we go into Wednesday, and then things will really improve into Thursday. So just a dusting here. Elsewhere, you're looking at more significant snowfall. Overnight tonight, -1. Tomorrow morning, we fall even further to -2. But, Meg, we will pick it up a little bit tomorrow afternoon, but still not seasonal. We got about a week to get there.
I'm bringing my winter jacket back out. Thanks for that, Colette.
Well, of course you should, for the first of spring, right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got more news coming up after the break. Israeli forces have staged another raid on the largest hospital in Gaza. The military says it had concrete proof Hamas had regrouped there. The raid was launched early in the morning and gunfire could be heard well into the day. The Israeli military released video it says shows Hamas fighters attacking Israeli troops near the hospital. Israel says it made 80 arrests and killed 20 members of Hamas, including a senior commander. One Israeli soldier is reported to have been killed. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry also reported several deaths. Thousands of Palestinians have taken refuge at Al-Shifa Hospital since fighting erupted early October. The international community has stepped up its efforts to get desperately needed aid into Gaza. Over the weekend, more than 200 tons of relief supplies arrived by sea. And for the past several weeks, a number of countries have been airdropping humanitarian aid into the territory. Adrian Arsenault got Canadian exclusive access to one of those flights carried out by the Jordanian military.
For a sense of scale of what's been done to Gaza, sometimes you need to go up. This is the view of the crushed communities of northern Gaza, 3,000 feet above them. It's the view from one of two Jordanian C-130s dropping donated aid. They'd prefer there was more, prefer to be able to drop it with some sort of precision. Frankly, prefer to not have to do this at all.
You hear people talk about how inefficient and expensive airdrops are. Well, consider this, for this whole plane, there are just 16 pallets of aid, a few hundred kilos each one. All of this was delivered on a single truck to this airfield.
Canada, by the way, is one of the countries donating parachutes for these drops, but for which planes, on which days, it's unclear. Striking that until a few weeks ago, any airdrops were considered exceedingly rare and only for places where access by any other means simply wasn't possible. Now, this has become almost a routine. At least from the perspective of the crew. Back down in the catastrophe that is Gaza, where and how the aid lands, who gets a hold of it, what possible differences this little makes in the face of hunger, this is urgent and worrying.
So in the next few days on The National, we'll get you a look of the daring details of some of these flights, but also the extraordinary lengths other countries in the region, like this one, Qatar, are going to help evacuate the wounded from Gaza. We'll be aboard a flying hospital, if you will. So getting aid in, getting people out is dangerous work, and it's ramping up. And all here know time is not on their side.
At CBC News Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault reporting from Doha, Qatar. When you think of the Namibian desert, snowboarding is not the first thing that comes to mind. Let's call this a distant cousin to the Canadian winter sport. Sandboarding is making a comeback in the desert town after a lull during the pandemic, but the open desert and rolling dunes also attract other extreme sports like quad bike rides. This seaside resort is seeing a boom in tourism in recent months. There's been a major increase in visitors as many ships go around the African continent to avoid the Red Sea. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.